Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Walker from AbilityNet. I'm very pleased to say I'm here to host a Fireside Chat at Zero Conference. Not my first Zero Conference. I love it here. And this is just a really good example of just the variety and the mix of stuff that Zero Conference pulls together. I'm part of the group that's been promoting inclusive arts, and today we're going to be meeting Jacob from, breakdancing community and particularly around disability and breakdancing. So I'm really pleased to meet Jacob. Hi, Jacob. I know that you've got up pretty early in the day. You're right over the other side of the state. So could you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and the group that you're from and the work that you do, because it's just really cool.
Yes, hello, good morning. My time. My name is Jacob Lyons. That's spelled out Lyons. And my breakdance name is Kujo. It's spelled Kujo. I sometimes do this because I'm also called Crazy Kujo, and it's the letter K, and it makes me a little crazy. But I am what we call a b-boy or a breakdancer, and I've been dancing since I was 15 years old. The year was 1992, and breaking is the world calls it breakdancing, we call it breaking. And it was a dance form that started in New York City and is spread around the world, and is one of the only dance forms that is open to people with a wide variety of abilities. So people that maybe were born missing a limb, or don't have the use of a limb, don't have the full use of hearing, don't have the full use of sight, maybe are using a crutch, dancing in a wheelchair, that sort of thing. It's a very adaptable dance in that it's the only dance form, to my knowledge, where you do not have to adapt your body to fit the dance form. You can adapt the dance form to fit your body. So I'm part of a group called Ill Abilities, and it's ILL abilities. And in hip hop, we like to take an adjective like ill and reverse the meaning, so that ill would be amazing. And so instead of disabilities, we have ill abilities, we like to say, because our disabilities give us superpowers in a special way. They allow us to be very creative in unusual ways that distinguish us from many other breakdancers. So we are an international crew. We have 9 members in 7 different countries, and I am based in the United States. I'm the only member based in the United States, and I'm by far the oldest member. I'm pushing 50 now and still doing this part-time, not quite full-time.
Cool. And could you tell us a little bit about the activities that you're doing as well? Because you're not, some of it, as you said, was performing, and some of it's workshops, and clearly there's some bit there where you're bringing in people, engaging with people for the first time, and also but also people who are working together, performing together.
Yes. So we participate in 3 primary modes of work, and a lot of them overlap, and they are both within the breaking community, which is quite large and global, but also outside of the community, the breaking community. And so these 3 forms of work are performing arts. We do a lot of theater shows and similar things, and as well as performances at conferences and corporate events and things like that. We do workshops, which are both geared towards competitive breakers, beginning breakers, all levels of people who participate in the dance form, but also geared towards people outside of our community. So sometimes that will be in, universities for dance students who are studying classical contemporary dance, but other times it will be for people who have a wide variety of ill abilities or different abilities. And often those will be clustered around one specific category of disability. So for example, we might have a workshop for deaf students, or a workshop for students with cerebral palsy even, or people in workshops to people with crutches, and so on and so forth. And then much more often a wide variety where a single workshop includes people with a wide variety of disabilities as well as people without disabilities. And the fun, the beauty of breaking is that we can adapt the dance and the movements on the dance to fit any category of ability or lack of ability, any restriction that you can think of. And so These workshops can go in a wide variety of directions depending on who shows up. So, for example, we might encourage, within their level of willingness to participate, a, a, a student in a wheelchair to try to get out of the wheelchair and see what they can do, either using the wheelchair as a prop or without the wheelchair at all. Well, how can they move on the floor within their range of movement abilities? And we'll help them discover movements that they enjoy doing and that are kind of cool. You know, we like to try to present a certain level of coolness, so to speak, in breaking. And so there are things like that in our workshops, and that self-confidence that can be gained in a workshop like that can then expand and extend outside of the workshop to where you have not just confidence in your ability to move a bit more freely, but maybe your ability to engage with the world a bit more freely. And the third form of work that we do is speaking, so motivational speaking and that kind of thing. And often we combine all three. The motivational speaking is where we can reach a much broader audience. We don't necessarily have to have people participate in the dance that we do, but we get to speak about what we do. We get to encourage the listener, the audience, with the message that we have, and we do have a bit of a slogan that we like to convey in all of our work, all the workshops and speeches and so on, which is no excuses, no limits.
Nice. And I guess part of the challenge is that you are pushing people both physically and emotionally, and in some senses that you mentioned that when we were just chatting earlier. There's two sides to that they physically may be doing something they may not be quite used to, but also they may be being pushed in a way that's slightly uncomfortable or that they're not necessarily. How does that work for you? How do you see that happening with the workshop participants, and how do you manage that in terms of encouraging engagement and participation in the dancing?
So the exact mode of doing that would depend very much on the individual. Right. And we can start with the idea that discomfort is extremely important in order to do anything in life. You have to get a little bit uncomfortable, and you have to go through that process of something is a little bit scary to think about doing. For example, the wheelchair. This is not something that I have much experience in. I've only been in a wheelchair when I've broken a leg, for example. But it's not hard to imagine the process that one must go through in order to not just get out of a wheelchair and try to do something when they depend on a wheelchair for everything, for their mobility, but even the thought of doing that. And so there's a bit of preparation that must go into that, where you have to make that thought a little bit less scary, and or, depending on the person, convince them to embrace that fear a little bit more readily and to get excited about that fear, that challenge. And then, and sometimes you have to skip that entirely and just get them out of the wheelchair. I don't mean physically, but if the person is willing to do so, to take that leap, so to speak, it's akin to dipping your toes in the pool versus just diving in the pool, because it's gonna be cold either way. So either you tiptoe into it or you just dive in. But if the person is willing to go through that process, then now a whole new world opens up. And that is quite literally what happens for the person climbing out of their wheelchair, getting onto the floor, and then figuring out how to move, where depending on what they can or cannot do, we give them very specific instructions as to how they can move. Then that is immediately transferable in so many other ways. It opens them up to thinking, okay, well, if I can climb out of my wheelchair and move in these specific ways, say I don't have use of my leg, well, what can I do? I can manhandle my leg, manipulate my leg. I can pick up one leg and move it to the right, move it to the left, move it forward, move it back. And then I can do that in synchronization with music that might be playing in the workshop. So if I can create this bit of coordination and choreograph this and turn this into something that not only do I feel good about, but other people enjoy watching, then there's a process here, a psychological process, an emotional process that opens me up now, is transferable now to make me think and question, what else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
I think change about myself.
I think that's the power of in the sense of the art form itself as well, and the expression and the individual being involved in it. I guess that's where they go. They start to express themselves and recognize that the boundaries are shifting, and then when they're not in the afterwards, once they've done that, then their lives feel different. They see the world differently. I think that's
Yes,
really that's truly powerful, right? For the individual, that's the thing that they're really changing their perspective about themselves.
Yes, and I went through that process myself because when I was a child, because of my deafness, I had speech impediments, and one of those speech impediments was a stutter, which was so bad I couldn't speak almost at all. Psychologically, I was just too nervous to utter any words, and I would try, I would need to engage with a teacher or with a shopkeeper or something, and not be able to get words out, physically unable to get words out. And when I began dancing, I had to do the same dive in, no tiptoeing. I just dove in and threw myself into this, what we call a cipher. It's a circle of people all watching each other as one person dances at a time in the center of the circle. Threw myself into the center of the circle, absolutely terrified. I did terribly. I was definitely not happy with what I did, but I did it.
Yeah,
and once I had done it, I could do it again and again and again. And from there, I gained a certain self-confidence that allowed me to begin talking to people, to be less afraid of talking to people. And then bit by bit by bit, I got to a point where I could now not just talk to one person, I could talk to many people and have great comfort and great confidence in speaking to a very large audience.
Yeah.
And so we've given speeches now to many thousands of people live, and there's no issue with it. And that helped me, in interpersonal relationships, how I have a wife, for example,
I think that's a very powerful way of seeing how the arts form itself is linked so directly to the personal. We've only got 3 minutes, and I don't want to miss the bit that you were telling us about what's happened and why we're not sitting in a room together, because you're obviously meant to be sitting here chatting to me. Tell us a bit about what's happening, because that sounds like a real challenge and not unexpected from the last few months, really.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have a bit of we've had a major transition, politically speaking, in the United States, and I was supposed to be at the conference in person with the financial assistance of the U.S. Embassy in Austria. And since the advent of the new administration, all funding for arts programs and other sorts of you might call it foreign aid, or this the type of thing that would have allowed me to come to something like this. All of that funding has been paused for some time while the administration figures out what they do and do not want to allocate their resources to. And so, I don't know that this kind of thing will become international and universal, but it is important for us to make sure that we advocate for ourselves and that we make sure that we are not reliant on one source of funding or support. So much of the work that I was saying that Abilities does is with the support of United States embassies in various countries around the world, where we can reach these audiences in other countries and engage with them, and it helps to to promote positive diplomatic relations with other countries, right? It's a wonderful thing. But now this puts me and people like me in a position where we can no longer rely on the government, for example, to do this sort of work. So it's important, I guess the message there is to make sure that we have a variety of resources, a variety of industries or sources of funding, sources of support that we can rely on to continue doing the work that we do, because many of us are very much affected by this, and we're not all that thrilled about it, regardless of what we might think of the administration. Yes, it's just important to make sure that you've always got a plan B, so to speak. You've always got another way, the ability to pivot, the ability to change and adapt. And again, adaptability is the underlying theme of everything that we do in Abilities and everything that we do in breaking. And now we also have to adapt logistically due to the current political situation. So it's quite an interesting thing to compare.
Yeah. So we're in the last minute. I'm really interested in what you think, bearing in mind you've just said the uncertainty you're living with at the moment. What were you hoping to do as a next big step, as an organization, as a group, as a network? Where does it go next for you?
Where does it go next? We will continue to do this sort of work, although perhaps without this category of U.S. Embassy work for some time unless that comes back into play. But we will continue to do this sort of work. We are going to do a festival of our own in Montreal, which is where the founder of the group is headquartered, where he lives. We are going to do an off-Broadway show in New York City next year. And we have a number of other engagements that are similar to the conference that you are all participating in right now, that we will continue to do, and these are in a variety of countries throughout the world. So we will continue as if there are no challenges, but of course there always are.
Fantastic. Well, it's brilliant to meet you. I'm so sorry you're not sat next to me, and we can carry on the conversation. Thanks for getting up and joining us. And it just is fantastic that, you know, using art and music and the way that you are and bringing people together and challenging them and supporting them is fantastic. So, you know, keep up the good work, and it's fantastic to have learned so much about what you do. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye-bye, guys.
Goodbye.